Welcome back to another episode of Camp Time is Real Time. I'm your host, Sarah. We've got a big one this week. Guys, it's Kerry Cowell. Oh, boy. This was an awesome conversation. Everything you would want to know from Kerry, basically, right? So, what it was like being actively recruited by Tom and being like, no, thank you, to, fast forward, her family with Sam and her kids being part of it. She's got such a cool perspective on camp. Guys, Kerry helped lead the unionization of camp. It's big news. Bonnie may have portrayed her in the video that Bill and Tom Gomet made, but Kerry was the real life hero. So you thank her for that. So we talked about all that behind the scenes stuff that you would hope to hear. And then we also just kind of organically got into what makes this community so special. And we did that by, talking about some of your favorite counselors. So this was a really good one. It was really fun to kind of go through, all of our favorites and what makes for camp. So you will love it. A couple of housekeeping things, guys. The emails continue to pour in. I got 2 this past week. Big time. So send me an email, camptimefcdc@gmail.com, or hit me up on Instagram at camptime_realtime. Give us a follow. The content there, A+. Stick around for Kerry's pod. You're going to like it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Before Sam, the BS time in my own timeline. Camp came on my radar in 2002 because that's when I started teaching. I was like a baby, 22, right out of college.
Oh my gosh.
Lucked out and got this job in Medfield in Tom's building. He was the PE teacher.
Okay.
So right off the bat, I had my little second grade class, and I got to know Tom pretty well because I had some heavy hitters in my class, and he would help me out. And but he would always say oh, you make a great camp counselor at my camp in the summer. And I was like, after just a couple of weeks of this first time job, I was already committed to the fact that my summers would be kid free. I was like, yeah, I don't really, I don't think that's really gonna work out. But he would always bring it up, and I would be like, no, didn't go to camp as a kid. I had no interest. I was like, this, just please stop.
Right.
But there always was a piece that stuck with me because Tom was just one of those inspirational people at school, just
right.
Like he is at camp, but at school, very similar, where he'd drop quotes off of people's desks and was always the lifter of people's spirits. So didn't think anything of it again. And then Tom was like, actually, I think you would really hit it off with my son, Sam.
Come on.
And I was like, okay, all right, where does he live? And he's like, oh, he's in Korea.
Perfect.
He's in the army. And I was like, yeah, I'm not into long distance. So I totally brushed it off.
Yeah.
A couple of months go by, nothing came of it again. And Tom was photocopying this magazine, and it was of Sam because he had won Soldier of the Year. And so I was like, oh, what's that? And so I take it, and I was like, wait a minute, is this Sam?
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, you can feel free to pass my number along. He's not going to be in Korea forever, right? And at that point, he was going to be moving back to Maryland. Long story short, so this is spring 2005.
Okay.
I lied to my whole family. Tom was so nervous, but I got on a plane, sight unseen, and our first date was in Maryland.
What?
I know. And we've been together ever since. So it's I got off the plane. I know we went out in Maryland that night, in Baltimore. And he was still in the army then. And I would commute on the weekends, the 9-hour trek back and forth. But I remember Tom, before I left that day, going, if this doesn't work out, just don't even tell me. I don't even want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Really bad.
Wow.
I know.
Holy
so then camp came back on my radar right away because Sam embodies camp. He does even when he's not there. And So that was so my first actual visit, when I first like set foot, I actually have pictures of it, and it was so fun just to go back. So it was that summer of 2005, Sam and I went to go visit, and just seeing like camp through Sam's eyes. Like now it's so awesome because, or actually when he was a counselor for many years, he would do like the Sam Cowell tour, and he would, you know, it's kind of like a rite of passage for his campers. But I got to experience that in 2005 with him, and I just remember being like, oh, this was the camp Tom, you know, had talked about. And like he always said, it's different, it's not like, and you could see right away, you know, like pretty special place. And so that summer I lived with him in Maryland, so we didn't have much camp like time. And then the next year, Sam got out of the Army, we moved in together, and that summer 2006 was my first, we both worked at camp. So that was like this was my crash course into the canon of camp, because it was like, when in the other podcast, people who were saying that's those 6 weeks, you know, it's like full immersion. And for me, it truly was. It was like Eric and Kelly's house almost every night, or at least I remember that. I don't know if that's true.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like I met Madman, right?
Oh, yeah. Dave Kelleher. Yeah.
Kelly Flynn. Like we would hang out, and I think maybe because they were working, they weren't even at camp. Maybe that was just once, but I have pictures of it. And I remember like that instant feeling that whole summer, and now still like 17 years later, of like, oh my God, it's Kelly Flynn. Like, oh my God, it's Dave, right? Like that's pioneering, like as if I grew up, like because it's like such a part of like the lore of my life.
Right.
It's so funny. And like my first introduction to Bill Danner was looking at Kelly and Eric's fridge, and it was their wedding invitation. So I don't know if you saw this, but Bill and Stacy had like their faces imposed on the Star Wars characters. It was like Han and Leia.
Oh, nice.
And I just remember being like, who is this? Who is this? It's like, oh, that's Bill Danner. And now it's like, oh, as if I grew up and saw the videos. Like I've never seen his videos, but I feel like I have.
Right. Yeah. I love that Tom is recruiting people to come to camp. I like hearing this from a bunch of people, like Medfield people.
Only
I love
special people though.
Yeah.
Right? Like I gotta.
No, I think it's
biased.
Well, no, though. Here's the thing. When you think about who came to camp from Medfield, like, I don't think he's just picking anyone. I think he's like, you would be great at camp, and he means it. Right?
And I want you to meet my son too.
Right. Yeah. Like he knew like what the special sauce was, and like who needed to be at camp. I think that is so cool.
Yeah.
But okay, so your first year, what's your activity and what's your tribe?
So I'd like to say that I play a role in the the union of camp that doesn't actually exist, because I think my summer 2006, it was crazy the things that I did.
Yeah.
But it was the funnest time ever, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that juxtaposition of that. But no, I was the arts and crafts counselor.
Oof.
Hard, I know, and I love
so
hearing. It's so validating hearing on the podcast when everyone's like, "Ugh, like who can do that?" Because I was like, "Oh, it's arts and crafts." I mean, I taught second and third graders at that point with like mostly special ed kids in my class.
Right.
Oh, this is like nothing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so much harder than my actual job.
Oh.
Like the lesson planning, and I went into it being like, "This is so fun, I love it." And like first day, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the hardest thing I've ever done." Like I had this like these intricate plans for the little ones. They would fly through them in 2 seconds. Yep. And all the older campers want to do is freaking GIMP.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to even start. So I was like pushing GIMP off as long as I possibly could. On top of the fact, Gail, who lives right next to where the barn is, so she was like a frequent flyer, and like it was like sneak attack, right? Those were the days where she would like be behind you and you'd be like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
And her number one thing she said to me was like, you do not break the GIMP out, because I will find it all over camp. So save it for a very special time. So I had like the fear of God in me about GIMP, on top of the fact I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
So, and the older campers, I'm not even kidding. I would spend hundreds of dollars on these, like, you know, like, oh, sand, let's make sand art, or,
Yeah.
I was on Pinterest all the time and like,
Oh my God.
actually, I don't even know Pinterest existed then. I think actually, you know what I was doing? I was looking through all of Tom's old books.
Oh, yep.
Right.
Yep.
So like for my awesome lesson plans, I worked so hard to come up with lesson plans. And the older campers, I love when you've said before, like when the campers know a new counselor, it's like you can smell them from a mile
like
away, and
blood
you're
in
like,
the water. Yeah.
and they'd be like, "We're not doing this. We just want GIMP." And I'd be like, "You can't have the GIMP." Like, and it would be, and I'd be like, it was just this. I remember this, and then I would finally give in, and then Gail would come up with like a pile of it and be like, "I found this." I'm like, I don't know how, because I didn't even break the box out. And I was like, I would buy it out of pocket and like give it to them. It was like, like a drug den. Just leave me alone.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was so awful. And then the tie-dye. Oh my God, this is the worst story. And I'm still so embarrassed. And thankfully, I shouldn't be sharing it because I think by this point, most people have forgotten, but
let's bring it back, baby.
I did something wrong with the tie-dye, and half the like washing machines in Franklin and Medway and wherever else the campers were from were stained forever.
Oh no.
The tie-dye came out in the wash.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
And it was so embarrassing. And our camp photographer at the time, I had done his, and he was so happy about it. But then he came back the next day and he was like, "My wife is so angry with you." It was like this horrible thing. But all I know is Gail was like, the tie-dye has never looked better this year. And I was like, that's all that matters. I don't even care about the washing machines.
That's right. Yeah. There is no outside. It's fine.
In that time, you were still doing the cookouts every week, the skits every week. I had the Comanches, and I don't know, some of them were wonderful. Like Shay was one of my first campers.
Oh, okay.
So, and I love that. Like Shay, talk about full circle. Like this, I have these beautiful pictures. I couldn't find them. I have to find them. Oh, she was so sweet. She was the most perfect camper in every single way. And to think like I got to watch her grow up and then become a counselor. And then even last year, for Eli's last year as a camper, he had her as the moose counselor. And like, I could start crying because like, it was the best thing for him. She was the best thing for him. So my first cookout, Mike Cowell was I think he was my CIT. I don't think he was an assistant yet. I could be wrong. Yeah. All I know is he couldn't start a fire. And I'm sorry, Michael, but that's just the truth. We've talked about this before, and I don't think he'll be very surprised by that. He didn't come and tell me. So I bring out like the Comanches, who are like, like food, lunch, right? Like getting lunch. And the chicken nuggets are cold. The tater tots hadn't cooked. So like the kids literally ate frozen chicken because it took so long. It was like time to go back in. I was like covered in dirt, and then you had to go put a show on.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it's like 100 degrees out. I just remember the first show was like Disney. And why I remember this is only because it was When You Wish Upon a Star. The kids were all dancing. They had like cute costumes and everything was going great. And I'm like, okay, finally. Right. And then one of them gets up front and just starts making like fart noises from his arm, like, right. And I just remember there was nothing I could do. And I just looked at Tom, and I will never forget his face out in the audience because he just lost it laughing. And he rode me on that like for years.
So how did you help to unionize the camp?
Ever since that summer, the second summer, he got rid of the tribes for arts and crafts. And I feel like I really like, that kind of set the tone. I forget what year the cookouts went to every other. Same with the show or the movie rather. I just feel like everything kind of, and so I think to the outsider listening, who hasn't like maybe been back in 20 years, you're like, what? What are you talking about? But I'm telling you right now, like, I don't know if it's the times are changing or counselors are more, I don't know what it is. I just know like, it feels a lot more manageable. Like the counselors can actually dive in and like, take pride in what they're doing in their area. And it's not such a grind.
Yeah.
So
I think in general, the age of the counselors has gotten older, just the median age, because there are a lot more teachers.
Yeah.
And with that, like, you guys are good teachers, right? So you're like putting in that effort, what it takes to have a successful activity. Like, whereas I I'm like, I wonder if I can just shoot the breeze with the kids. I wonder if we could do that for 45 minutes. Of course we can't, but every activity I'm going to try. And then I'm like, I do want to play a game. Like, I don't know why the kids like me. But
there's something to be said for that. Like, I think that there needs to be a balance. And I think having some of that still at camp is so important, because part of it's the kids too. The kids are so, like, I think they were more engaged when you guys were growing up, because
they had to compete for our attention.
Well, no, but they were like, they didn't have screens at home, and they being outside was like, you could just sit and be. And now it's like, it feels like you have to like micromanage every minute. So I think there's something to be said for what you bring. And I think that's part of the secret sauce of camp. Like, for me to know that, right, and to try to emulate some of that, knowing that I can't. But and I think the older counselor thing, I think as kids, you know, like we've talked before, like your Aiden has an allergy, Olive has an allergy, even just the responsibility of carrying an EpiPen, like Olive's allergic to wasps. It's the scariest thing on earth, letting her go to like a camp where that happens. So like there's some semblance of like, but you need the kids too in order to you know, have that.
No, you're right. I think I said it with Bill. I think I left it in the podcast. He's like, when we worked there, like camp was for us, and we feel like we've had our cake and eaten it too, because now that our kids are there, and it's like everyone is so responsible. Like when I dropped off the EpiPen, and Elizabeth was like, "Yeah, no, you got it." She's like, "I've got these food for the kid," and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so happy."
Because she's a mom of a kid with an allergy too. So it's like,
it's just but I just think it's so great. And I think the mix now that you have, like, there are people who like the adults in the room, for lack of a better word, but then you also have the college kids and the high school kids that are like that, like that just prime time emulation. Like, I want to be these people. Like, it's
right. And you like, you would get up at sing, whereas I didn't. Like my one time that I got up at sing, like I waited the whole summer. I would like get sick to my stomach and be like, okay, I think I'm going to do it this time. No, I'm not going to do it this time. Right. Like, if no one ever went up at sing, because we only had like responsible old people like me, like, and sing wouldn't be much fun. So like, you really do need people of all. It's just so awesome, because it does.
And isn't it great though? Wasn't it great when you went up and then everyone cheered so loud for you?
Everyone should have that feeling once in their life, of that, like everyone's like doing a standing ovation, you know, for you, and to watch these kids. Oh, it's amazing. So my other first from that summer was oatmeal. Oh my gosh, it was disgusting. It was everything people had said. Even just jumping into the mine brook afterwards was disgusting, but it was a rite of passage. Like, I had to do it, right?
Absolutely. When you did oatmeal, I can't tell from the picture, were you on the slope? Was it right by the pool? Is that where you guys did it?
Yeah, like right behind, in between the pool and where the hill, I think goes.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen anymore. And I think it's all for the.
Oh, where is it now?
Oh no, that stopped, I think.
Oh, oatmeal doesn't happen?
No, I know. And I don't want to be the one to break that.
Maybe for the 50th, we get a huge tarp.
Ooh.
We do it down like by boating where it's flat, and then just do that. And then just for 1 year. When your kids, like when Eli started, was that Tom as program director? Okay.
Yeah, most of Eli, because both my kids were lucky enough to redshirt.
Love it.
Eli actually almost went for the I don't know what you call a trifecta. So we actually have some funny pictures of like Eli's false start.
Yeah.
Because he's just like, camp is in his blood. And it's just like, he's so in tune with Tom, and he was like ready. We got him a backpack. I was like, he was like,
was he like 3?
Like three.
Awesome.
And he was so little. And I was like, really nervous about it, but Bonnie's like, no, he's fine. You know, she'd been around him. She's like, just send him in, you know?
Yep.
I love her whole philosophy. Like, you get what you get and you don't get upset.
That's funny.
She just really is like a role model for all parents. Like, she just is like, he'll be fine or he won't, you know? And so I'm like, all right, well, let's try it. So we send him. Within like 1 hour, I get the FCDC calling my phone, and it was so cute, because he went up to Bonnie and he's like, I think I want to go home now. And she's like, okay. So she's like, Eli wants to come home now. So I went and picked him up. But yeah, so he was mostly with Tom because Sam didn't take it over until, no, so 2017 was Tom's finale and we didn't know it. And it was the summer.
How did that happen? I want to talk about that because
Yeah,
there's a lot
the
of
summer
people.
that so it was 2017 and they needed a ceramics counselor. Both the kids were at camp at that point, my kids. And I'm like, you know what, maybe I could do ceramics. You know, It's not arts and crafts.
Yeah.
So there's no film.
Yeah.
There's no film. Like I think I could maybe that one would work for me. And I had the Algonquins.
Okay.
And Susan Cowell came back that summer too to do arts and crafts. God love her. But she's like, she didn't have a tribe, and she's really good at like coming up with like fun, creative things. The kids loved her. It was like a really, really awesome thing, and she loved it, and it was so fun. Like the whole family was there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And they knew it the whole time, Tom and Susan. But he just didn't want it. He kind of did the same thing when he retired too. He's very humble and just didn't want to make a big deal about it. So they knew it. And now looking back, it's like there were a couple of things that we just didn't pick up on.
Really?
Yeah. And that was it. I think he told us at the end. And so, so Sam's first summer was 2018.
So did he tell the whole staff or just you guys? And
I don't remember.
Was it like a surprise the next year? Because was Sam doing like certain things was he kind of like shadowing him? Or?
They were grooming him.
Sure.
That sounds like way more intense than.
Hey, look.
Sam knew. I mean, Olive's already saying that she's going to be the first female program director, so it's going to be like a battle in this family.
Love it. I know. Oh my gosh.
They're technically already being groomed.
That's
great. So there was like, even if Tom had to go away or something, which was rare, but like Sam would step in and
So I mean, I wonder if one of those clues you're talking about is just the fact that the whole family was working there,
right? And
like, because Susan had never.
She hadn't. No. I think like she did.
Still in.
She would come in or like that, and just like me when we were not working, a very frequent visitor, right? But this was like an official, and I don't think she had done that in a long time, like an official whole summer. So it was really special.
What was like the prep like for you guys, like in the off season heading into it? Like, tell us the people want to know.
I think because we live, we built our house on the back of Tom and Susan's property. Yeah. Even when Sam wasn't like officially the program director, people wouldn't believe how much time camp takes up. And it's in a very like, you choose it. There's nothing like, you don't have to be doing it. Most of it's like, it's completely self-initiated, what you're doing, but it literally is it's all the time. You're always talking about it, always talking about camp, always planning things. And when Sam was taking over, Tom, they met a lot leading up to that. Sam wanted to make some things his own. And that was really important to him, but also to obviously like keep a lot. And now it's Billy and Sam, and Sue definitely jumps in too, but Billy lives it. And it's been such a joy to watch the two of them, because especially knowing Billy is like, he was a kid when I met him. If he was a CIT, maybe even a camper still. I can't remember, but like to watch Billy grow up, and now like they're so great together.
That's awesome.
They're texting 365 days a year, and
love it.
It's like such great, thoughtful stuff. Watching the two of them talk through changing tribes to troops, and they make a lot of decisions, and they're especially, oh gosh, last summer was just like, it was so heavy, but so good. But the decisions turned into things like, are we shutting camp down? Because the Board of Health says one thing, the state saying another, the camp association saying another. They're going on webinars for camp associations, and it's like in the fly, they would be like, the nurse says this, and so they would have to like make these enormous decisions. And sometimes like that was part of my summer last summer. Like I wasn't technically on the payroll, but I was
Yeah.
there because I would have
Working.
to sometimes just like shut the door with the both of them, be like, and I would just listen, just be like, talk at me. It's 2022 and like we want to welcome and make every kid feel loved no matter
Yeah.
who they are. And the two of them have just embraced that. And it's like all about the kids and it's just beautiful.
Do you know what's crazy? I feel like just in the the moment and time that we're at, we have like language around this stuff now, but camp was always kind of doing that without really like saying it and knowing. Yeah. And it's kind of cool. And it's great that it's like, it's just the transition now to like, oh, this is like, oh, people know these terms, they're familiar with it. This is what we're doing. And like, and that's who we are. And so, and I think that that's awesome. And so the day that I like came to walk around was the COVID day, was the day.
I remember. Yeah.
And like, I had no idea what was going on.
That's the beauty of camp, right?
That's the thing. Like, cause I came around saying, and he was just like, oh, heads, like, whatever, quick, whatever. And I had no idea what was going on. And it was just
we're shifting to masks right now.
And that, like when we got that email, cause it was the last week, right? Or last few days.
It was the second to last. So the last 2 weeks we were in masks.
Was it the last? Okay.
Yeah. One troop had to quarantine.
Yeah.
That was like earlier on. And that was the most heartbreaking, going up to having assistant counselors go up, or whoever could find a car before the kid got out of the car, be like, sorry, your troop is quarantining. And it was like, no. But their parents were wonderful. I mean, we all knew it was like a society, like you just have to be flexible, but
it's probably going to happen. Yeah.
It's like, you can't get out of the car. You got to go home.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But like as a parent, so there was so much communication last year. And when they were like, all right, we're going to do masks. And in my head, I was like, oh, because they don't want to have to shut down camp and not be able to come back like that. It made total sense. And I was saying that like, right, like way back in 2020 when everything was shutting down, I had better communication from camp than I did like my daycare. Like not hyperbole at all.
And that was mostly Billy at that point. Like he was
awesome.
Run it by, but
and the holiday cards. Chef's
Billy.
kiss. What a good idea.
Billy is like, he's a joy to watch doing this.
I guess like, what is that? I always did kind of wonder like the collaboration between like Gail and Tom, or now Sam and Billy. Are they just talking about?
Well, it's funny because it hasn't shifted much. Like Billy has essentially gone into Gail's role and Sam has gone into Tom's, and Sue is behind the scenes. She completely trusted him to just like run the day to day, like keep the counselors happy, the kids happy, parents happy, like run all of the program stuff essentially, right? Yeah. And I think they would bounce ideas off each other. They were such a good team too.
Yeah.
And then the same with Sam and Bill. Like if Sam's going to run competitions, or if Sam does all the hiring, just like Tom did. So like off season, that's another huge thing that happens. And I love Freddie's podcast where he talks about walking out in their boots in the middle of winter. Like, because that's how Tom would run things. That's how Sam runs things. And it's like, there's something so special about that.
It's very cool. Yeah.
Very authentic. Like, so the hiring is something that Tom and Sam do. And they run everything by, like, they'll all meet usually, and Gail always buys donuts, and that's always been the case. She still does now.
That's great.
So when Sam goes over for his Saturday meetings, like he always comes back with donuts, and I remember Tom used to as well.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think other than the COVID crazy stuff that like is new and you know, changing mascots and changing real bathrooms, other than like those types of things, like I think that's kind of how it aligns.
Gotcha. I think that a lot of people are interested in that, because
it's fascinating, because there's
it
so
is
much.
because it runs so smoothly. You don't think about it, and that's the sign that it's working, right? It was last week I was talking to Aiden and something about camp, and I forget what we were talking about. It's like I was like, yeah, you know, your counselors, you know, they're working hard, He goes, yeah, well, not Sam. I go, what do you, I go, like, director Sam? He goes, yeah. He goes, he just walks around. I go,
I love, and that's
because
what
that's
Tom
the
used to
message.
say.
Yeah.
And I love Tom used to say that to the kids and be like,
Yeah.
I don't do anything here. I just walk around and
Yep.
watch, you know,
He's
and it's like, oh
I'm
my gosh,
Tom, I walk
only
around.
knew.
Yeah. And it's, again, that's the sign of it.
That is a good sign.
Yeah.
I love it. That would make him happy.
So you pulled off something that's never been done before, is about to be done again. You got married at camp.
At camp, yes.
Did you know early, how did you end up there?
I felt like I knew every intricate piece of camp. And Sam's best friends are from camp. We literally, they're Uncle Pat and Uncle Adam in our house. That's awesome. How they've always been known, because they're like chosen family. And so every piece of us, even our beginning relationship, was centered around camp. And so we were like, this would be awesome. I don't know if we could pull it off. It was a lot to ask, right? So we were even thinking like, maybe we could get married at camp, and then Gail and Sue jumped into it like full throttle. Like they were amazing. So I didn't even see anything at camp. The whole ceremony, like we got married at the gazebo, and it was magical. And
oh my God.
it was beautiful. They had decorated with like sunflowers everywhere. And I remember getting out of the car and being like, oh my God, this is so beautiful.
That's amazing. Tell me about how you got to know Ty. Did you start the same? Was he there when you started?
Yeah, so it's actually, you and I didn't overlap. I came the year after you.
That's right. Yep.
Which I felt like we overlapped because all your people were still there. You were still coming. I feel like whenever we went out during that 6-week immersion, like you were a part of it. So it's like,
had a hard time letting go.
I know. Well, I get it. Believe me. I mean, I do too, obviously.
Well, I mean, here I am running a podcast 20 years later.
So I started with him when he started, and then I only did those 2 summers because then I was pregnant I had Eli the summer after. And then he went for a little while longer. I forget how long. It feels like forever, because Ty is just, he is as much a camp as anyone.
Yeah.
But he did take a break, and I think he was like doing some acting, and maybe it was California, wherever he was.
In
LA. And I know every year, part of the off season talk, those years that he wasn't coming back, it's like, all right, so Ty's at like 50% for this year. And Gail would be like, raise his pay. And everyone's like, what? You can't do that. And he'd be like, I don't even care. And Tom would be like, don't, no. Like, but she'd be like, pay him anything. Pay him as much as everyone just to get him back. And she would always be like, I'm going to write a letter to Steven Spielberg. He just needs to know this man, like, she just believed, just like all of us, but she really like, she would have fought
to do something about it. Yeah.
We just hit it off from the moment we both started. And I feel like kind of territorial over him. And then as I, have kind of watched our relationship bloom, I'm like, wait, he has this like with everyone. Like he has these special intimate relationships with people, but I'm like, but it's supposed to just be me and Ty. So I really feel like so he has shown me, like my kids, everyone, like just so much about just life and about embracing yourself, being who you are. He brought Eli out of his shell so much the summer that he had him, and as a camper, and it was just magical. Oh gosh, just get like watching him, he would do things like get the whole camp to do a flash mob.
No way.
Like it was just everything. And even like when I first started, I was struggling with like outfits for camp, because I didn't grow up at camp. And I'm like, and he'd be like, I don't think anyone's ever worn a running skirt to camp before. I was like, that was my like go-to, was my running skirts. And he'd be like, ooh, you have like multiple running skirts. Oh my gosh. So he
notices. He notices the details.
He does. And I could talk to him all day. He has my whole heart. And
he just has a way, like you said, of making everyone feel like they're number one, whether it's another counselor or it's another kid, or like, we're going to do things differently this way. Watch how cool it is. Yeah. And then like, also if you're in my tribe, like watch, from behind me because I'm going to be in
Oh,
front,
absolutely.
like doing the dance.
Absolutely. But even Olive never got to have him. And she's like, she said something the other day. She's like, I'm so sad I'll never have Ty, because like his skits are amazing. And I'm like, yeah, they are. But it's funny because so do the campers. They don't see it as like, this is the Ty show.
Right.
they're just so happy to be a part of the Ty show because he's,
Yep.
you know, he brings the house down every time.
Every time.
Every
Yep.
time.
Yeah. Try going after that every week.
Oh,
It's like it doesn't matter what we do because no one
he
cares.
has them like dancing and knowing every word to David Bowie,
Yeah.
to Whitney Houston. It's like, I mean, it's just, we should pay him more.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. And even like last summer when we needed one extra counselor. And this is one of those like, you know, crazy ideas. Like, he's like, do you think Ty would just do an extra area, like something where he could run with it? And I'm like, I don't know, like, why don't you reach out to him? And so he did, and Ty immediately, it's like, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And so he came up with this amazing idea. So he, at the end of last summer, wrote Sam the most beautiful thank you note, like totally unprompted, right? This is so Ty. The thank you note was like, thank you for like believing in me and that I could do this extra thing. And it just like, he's like, I was able to be so much more creative. It like all these things that it was like, oh my gosh, he notices, and he's so different than, we're just so lucky to have him in our lives and our kids' lives. Really, he's unbelievable. So
no, he's become one of those staples at camp that like there's there's a generation of campers who like that's the counselor they think of when they think of camp, and that's huge. He's like, those 6 weeks kind of fill my cup, and then I am able to like be my best self for the year. Like that's the whole thing about camp, is that like you get so much from it, and you don't even realize that you're giving, but it's like when it all comes together, it's like it just
it is.
It's hard to put into words, but you know, here we are on a audio medium.
Right. And so many kids go on, and I remember hearing this from Tom early on, that a lot of kids go on and write about camp, you know, our camp for their college essays.
Oh, 100%.
And like, it's just such a foundation that you can't put into words. But if you're lucky enough to be able to, it's really like so special when the kids share those back with us, because even just I get to read some of the CIT essays this year, and it's oh my gosh, these kids, like camp is so important. It's so important. It always has been. And
I wonder how many college recommendation letters Tom wrote.
A ton.
I know
it all
me and all of my friends. I can't imagine. Because it's
now it's Sam, and it's like it's all the time, and it's something he takes a lot of pride in.
I'm sure. So, when did you meet John? I guess.
So John, I knew from Medfield.
Oh, that's right. That's
so
right.
It's funny because I knew John before I knew Sam.
Oh, okay.
And
was he back at camp?
He was. I think he had already been back for a couple of years.
Okay. Yeah.
But so I got to work with him and then get to know him really well. And Sam and John that summer, and they had already like been close, but I think not as close like Adam and Pat. That wasn't like part of his, because John's a little bit older. Than Sam. And I think because he had time away, and Sam had a lot of time away too, but they were always like close. And then once they started working together, they just, you know, picked up naturally, and I did too. And some of my favorite memories with John are like the off season, because I got to see him a lot in Medfield, and like wherever we were, he always used to call me Mrs. Cowell, like Mrs. Cowell.
That's great.
Mrs. Cowell. Like he was at our wedding. But I always did this thing from the moment I started working at camp, because watching John with his 3 girls is like the most wonderful. He would just over the top, like camp style, with pride, right? Like if Mary got up, he would be like, everyone stop talking, shut up, Mary, stop this thing right now. Like, or he would like run from wherever he was if one of the girls was up doing anything, and sprint and get in the middle and just like watch them. And some of it was like the stage presence of camp, but he genuinely, like, everything he did was for the girls. And so I would take pictures of the girls every summer, and then, like, I'd wait till like January or February, and when it was like extra cold and nasty out, I would inter-office mail him pictures.
Come on.
And
Oh
so,
my gosh.
yeah, his office was with the athletic director, who I'm also good friends with. And so when they had to clean his desk out, Eric sent me a picture. Like, he had kept a lot of the pictures in the desk, and it was like, oh, like, I would write funny things on him on the back. And every time we would run into each other, Mrs. Cowell, we have 63 days until camp. I'm like, how do you know that? That's so weird. That, like, he's like, how's the countdown? Like, he lived for camp. And he's just so freaking funny. Like,
yes.
But like at school, he was kind of serious, more because I think, he's like a social studies teacher and teaching high school kids and just living life like we all are outside of camp.
Right. Yeah.
So it always caught me off guard though, but he was always silly with me and Sam whenever he saw us in Medfield, and we would always laugh. But when we were at camp, it's like this, watching him just, he just was so appreciative, and he would always get up and say that, and just say, like, there's just no better place. Was always just so grateful. And he would do this really funny thing when Twitter kind of started and our district kind of took off with Twitter. And I'm a huge Twitter user.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to have phones at camp, and the councils are really good about that. It's amazing. But like, I would sit in the back of the sing with him when my kids were at camp, and he would always be like, oh, that was an excellent article you just posted on the Twitter today. And I'd be like, what are you doing reading my tweets when you're like out in the woods? And he's like, well, it was really that excellent. And I just I don't know if you noticed, but I retweeted it. Always like busting me about Twitter, but he always had me every single time. It was so great. He was so fun.
Can I just jump in? He and I had that exact conversation, but I said the same to him because I was following him on Twitter.
Yeah.
And he'd just tweet out these like random things. And I was like, John, you're a great Twitter follow. That's so funny.
He was. Yeah. No, and he was like, no one likes or retweets my stuff. I'm pretty like passionate on it too. And I'm like, I miss him so much, like for so many reasons, but every darn day that man,
the likes alone. Yeah.
Yanciaco liked and retweeted it. I was like, wow, he likes my like libraries are, for diverse readers. Like
absolutely.
Just
to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
When you say like he was so darn funny, he was, but he was funny in like the kindest way.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was always like, that was one of the things about camp where it's so easy to slice the other way, to do like a snarky, like joke or whatever. And I'm, guilty of that, but he was just always, he was hilarious, and it was funny, and it was kind. And it was just like,
never at anyone's expense. You're right.
No. And it was that. And then coupled with just who he was, like the presence that he had as this like super popular camp guy. And you're like, oh, but he's awesome. Like there's no ego about it. There's no, it was just like, talk about a role model, right? Talk about kids coming up being like, this is the way to act. I think we only worked together, I think it was 1 or maybe 2 years. I can't remember when he came back, and he treated us like equals.
Yeah.
And to the point where I have this memory of, we were on free swim. He was sitting to the left of the diving board with Katie Sorensen, and I was adjacent to them on the right. And his kids were really young. I think he only had 2 at this point. And he's like, we got to start a daycare. he's like, those places are like money-making machines. He's like, I think we can do it. And he was genuinely talking to me, Katie Sorensen, Katie Crowley, and myself about it. And we were
I
like,
love it.
we're like, he's trusting us with this
Yeah.
idea. And we're like,
run with it.
yeah, we're like, should we start a daycare? We're like, I think we should. And he was just like, I've got a great idea, and you guys are the people to help me. And we were like,
oh my gosh.
like,
And he would have been great because he's so good with kids. And my kids, I think for the longest time, really thought he was their uncle. Like when they were little, because it's like, because that's just how he would get down and like, when they were really little, he would talk to them like so seriously. And Olive was so off the wall as a toddler, like so outrageous. Yeah. She's so like together now, but like, oh my gosh, she was such a nightmare. And she would say these things, but he would get down and be like, Olive, like really make her feel like an adult. And she would talk to him, and oh my gosh, he would get the biggest kick out of her. Yeah. She actually, it's cute. One of the last, Sam and John used to text all the time and like funny stuff. Sam could really be himself with John, and it's just so sad because it's like he's really missing his buddy, and at camp and even off season, because their texts, he would just start dying laughing about like the most ridiculous things. But one of the last texts that they had was, but we sent him this like care package, and in it, Olive had written a card to him like, "Dear John," like this is so not like her, because she would never like selflessly do something like this, but she was like, "I'll come to your house and rub your feet for you." And he got the biggest kick out of that. And it was like so funny. He's like, "Tell Olive, like, yes, like send her over so she can come rub my feet for me, please. They're sore." His girls, I'm so lucky. I get to see them at school a lot. And Caitlin is a senior this year. And she's like the president of the student council. All three of them they're just freaking amazing. And Caitlin, she's this tall, blonde, beautiful. She's got everything. Yeah. And when I see her in the high school, like I feel so short compared to the high schoolers. Sure. Yeah. She's always surrounded by like, tall, beautiful kids. Right. Yeah. And no matter who she's with, I am just always blown away by this. That shit. "Hi, Kerry, how are you doing? How are the kids?" And like stops, the whole troop will stop, and it's like, wait, is she talking to me? Like, oh my God, she's talking to me. Yeah. I'm in the presence of the coolest girl in school. God. Yeah. So she's just like, I ran a professional development day last week, and I saw her. She's like, "Hey, how was DLD last week?" I'm like, oh my God, like, how do you even know that? Wow. She's just so wonderful. And I'm so proud of the three of them. They're amazing, amazing kids, all three of them. I try to embarrass like Mary in the hallways because she's a freshman. I'm like, Dawn would want this, and like nothing embarrasses them because they are like, they turn it back. Like she'll be like, "Oh, hi, Kerry, how are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well," like they can't embarrass me because you guys are there's like adults, right? They're just they're amazing. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know his kids really at all. We just kind of miss that. But I feel like I do. Yeah. And like, well, do you know the song? The John Panciaco with 3 kids? Yeah. Yeah. That's a Katie Sorensen. Is it? Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh. Because that's pretty impressive. Like, that's my kids growing up, they thought those were the words. I mean, that's all we've ever sung. And then the camp, right? So like they'd be at school and it's like, I can't even think of what is it, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Yep, like they would sing that, and my kids are like, "John Panciaco with 3 kids," right? It's like, that's the words. That's so funny. Oh, and it was so fun to watch them. And so so deeply, deeply missed. And I just feel so like grateful. This man, he'd say, "How's this day going?" It's like, "It's powerful. What a powerful day," right? And it's just that word, powerful. And just to have had him in our life, we're just very, very blessed. Oh, absolutely. It all boils down to community, and this one that has been put together over 50 years at camp. Just like, I think what the podcast is kind of doing is like kind of showing the ingredients to keep the analogy going. And it's just like, everything you talk about is like, oh yeah, that is pretty amazing. Well, and I feel like this is my like love letter to all of you camp people and to camp because I am like an outsider, and I love like when I first reached out and I'm like, I'm small potatoes, and you're like, no one's small potatoes.
There are no small potatoes. That's right.
But I am peripheral in the sense of like, you know, I've kind of gone through the trenches a little bit, but definitely no, I haven't really, like, I didn't grow up there, and I know that I've seen a lot, and I know that like I'm fully immersed in all the like workings, but I truly am like an observer of it. And I think that's the beauty of like, I think what I can do, like I have the lens of like watching and seeing what makes this special. And the podcast doesn't surprise me. Like I listen, I like can't wait for those when you drop them, and I'm driving to work and I'm like laughing and I'm crying and I'm like talking out loud, and if anyone's listening or like watching me in the car, I like, it's so emotional, but it's just showing everything that I know about it. And there are so many special people. And to think like it all started because Gail had this as a dream when she was like a little girl. Like, that she wanted a summer camp. Like, who dreams about that? And then for her to watch it, and some of my favorite memories was like the later years of Ed's life, where he would drive the quad out to that magic spot that you talk about a lot. And I think Bill Danner, a couple of people have brought it up, like the top of the hill, right? The top of the hill. And he would drive it out. And I always had the advantage then of like, my kids were little. So I would be like, and he loves babies. And he would always want me to have like the babies come over and talk to them. And everything he had to say was like him watching Gail or watch it. And he'd be like, there's no place on earth like it, you know? Just the sage advice of like, Kerry, like it's not like this everywhere else. And like the pride that he took in like helping Gail have her dream.
Right.
And then watching her and just like, even when she's like on a step stool with like a chainsaw taking down poison ivy, right? And him just lovingly, and us just like watching her like, oh, there goes Gail, you know?
Right. It's such a good image.
But it's all because like that she dreamed it. And it's just, you know, all the years that she's kept the conservation, the land, like, it's just that it's unheard of. You know, she grows like monarch butterfly, like she's always so environmental and ahead of her time.
Yes.
Every Christmas gift has to do with camp. Like, we're the only family that's buying each other like fanny packs or weird t-shirts or weird hats. But from Jesse out in like the state of Washington, to Uncle Jack and Uncle Mike, like some of the greatest gifts that my kids have ever got, they always have to do with camp. Like the year that Eli and all have got like the one man suit, like the blue, you know, it like zips over your head.
Oh yeah.
Because Uncle Mike wore the green one in a video. Like Uncle Mike's videos alone, we could do a whole podcast on those, because my kids are so popular because Uncle Mike always gave us we have them, right? Yeah. And so whenever anyone from our life has kids over that are familiar with camp, like they just sit in the basement for hours and just watch. Like it's like the most amazing thing.
What a gift.
I have some really funny pictures actually I've taken through the years where Sam would call me and be like, I need like 50 boxes of pasta. And I'd be like, okay. And I go to Market Basket and it's like, or the year that the popcorn machine died. And so I had like literally like 50 bags of popcorn. I bought like 25 bottles of baby shampoo, and the people, and it's just that. And I don't think anything of it. And I'm like looking around like, oh my God, this looks
hello.
Like I have bought some really crazy things, and it's always last minute. It's always like, oh my God, you need to get this. And I'm like, I'm on it.
So you've taken the role. That used to be like the role of the video counselor. Like I remember Tom, because they always had a free period because they'd have like two double blocks. Okay. So there was always a video counselor coming back from Market Basket with like 100 boxes of popsicles or something like that.
Camp humor in general, like that, I feel like it's come out a lot, and as an outsider coming in, and it's also the humor that Tom and I have always had too. But you kind of put it perfectly with John too, because like the camp humor that I I love that it's never mean spirited. It's
No.
just freaking funny. Like everything
Yeah.
about camp is funny. And my kids are more funny because of camp. Like they're just funny humans.
Yep.
Um,
Definitely.
and like Tom Cowell is like the funniest person. Like he's just, if he's busting you, like he loves you, right? And it's like,
Yes.
um, oh gosh. And Sam has a different way about him, right? I
Mm.
love that about my husband. He's wicked funny, and especially like when he's close with someone like John,
Right.
like his humor is like, but he's different in the way that he handles camp. And it's been so like amazing to fall in love with him in this as he's taken over this role and see
Right.
him kind of just shine. I think everyone always said like, oh, of course, Sam, like when you're friends. I loved that podcast, by the way, your friend
Yeah.
Aaron's.
Oh yeah.
It was so awesome. It was just like perfect, just
Yeah.
summation of everything. And when he's like, oh, of course, Sam
Yeah.
took over, I'm like crying because I'm like, I love people just get it, but it wasn't just so easy for Sam to make that jump, right? Because it's
Right.
like,
But he made it look easy, didn't he?
yeah,
Because yeah.
and he tries, but
Yeah.
he's also like, it's hard, but it's amazing. And honestly, like Tom, I love like so much about what he created, what he started, right?
Yeah.
And what they we've been able to like have as a huge part of our whole life. And yeah, just little things like when he would say like, oh, a rose between or a thorn between two roses, right?
Yeah.
Um, or no,
Eh,
a rose between two thorns. Is that what it is? Like when he would sit up and he would have like Kelly and
Oh, right.
Bonnie
Yeah.
next to him, and he was always,
Yep.
or I think I'm saying that wrong, but well, he can
We'll leave
correct
it
me.
in.
He just like, I know how lucky I am that I have this, but it hits me all the time,
Yeah.
especially at camp. Like, and then to have the kid experience that I got to bring the babies there and
Yeah.
have them fall in love with Sue and Bill and Shannon even, and to experience that and then watch Eli like go off on his own when he was ready finally after his
Right.
false start. And then when I was just having that time with Olive was so special. And then to set that little chickadee free and
Yeah.
have her start with Bonnie and then to just watch them and just awe of like, when they were little, every room in our house was a different camp area. Like they played camp and they'd be like,
What?
you can call me John and meet me down at the bridge. And, it
Oh
was
my
like the
gosh.
den was John's adventure area. And like, they would play for hours.
Oh my God.
It was just such a crucial
That's
part. And
amazing.
now, like I have an awkward teenager he's amazing. And he's so different at camp.
Yeah.
Because he, especially when he's like with the little kids and, it's just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
magical. And watching them both like swim was one of the biggest milestones that has stuck with me, because by the time they got to camp, it was like a lot of the milestones had already happened. But watching those two start to swim and
Yeah.
and Kelly and the program that she runs at the pool, it's like, God forbid they have it first
Yeah. First thing in the
time
morning.
period.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna hear about it for
Very
forever.
cold.
Yes. So other than that, like that is so powerful as a parent to know your kid's not going to drown. Like you
Yeah.
cannot pay for that.
No.
The confidence of what they have in the pool. And
Yeah.
so it's just, I'm very lucky and I'm excited to be back this year. And honestly, like I love my summers, and I loved the flexibility of like, I could go into camp, but I didn't have to.
Yeah.
I always run. It's like exactly 1 mile from my house to camp. So I used to run with them in the baby stroller. Now I just run on my own.
Awesome.
But listening to the podcast has got me so excited about actually going back and working there this
Awesome.
summer. Yeah. And that's not a small thing. So.